In today's episode, I talk about negotiations and particularly how do we manage those hotspots and triggers which often end in conflict, how to get beyond them, and how do we find a good solution for everyone.
This is how legends are made.
One of the things that we can all struggle with in some form, particularly in life, be it family or at work, is when it comes to negotiations. When we're talking about something where we probably think we're already coming from two different opposite points, and I have a particular point in mind. When I've had conversations with my ex-wife, you can imagine there are points which we have already points we're differing from, so we're coming from two different angles. And maybe that's quite a big example, but one where you can still find some comparison to your situation is any negotiation situation where you're going to have to wrangle with some difficult topics. And how do we actually manage that? Now, by no means do I have it all perfectly, but one of the great solutions I found, or at least makes it easier and allows some space so negotiations are more positive and actually have the desired effect, which is coming to an agreement. The technique that I find most useful is actually when there are going to be things in a conversation, a negotiation, which are going to be the hot spots, the triggers, which will have maybe historically, for whatever reason, have been the areas of disagreement. And it's important to recognize those first so that we can, initially at least, avoid them. Because the step we would like to be taking is actually focusing on one key area, and that's on what we do agree on, and find ways to understand what areas are we similar to. The idea is to build upon that of agreement. We can get very quickly caught up in the triggers and the hotspots, which then can collapse a conversation. But if we can return to where we do agree, focus on those points, we are getting closer to some understanding what we can achieve before we get to the triggers. So if you've got a grounding of a number of layers of what you do agree on, which is a fantastic start and actually creates a collaboration already and a great energy, a positive energy, which is again great for the negotiations in general, you're more likely to be able to get through the thornier issues. The second step to the negotiation, after you've got to the points of agreeing, when we are looking at these hotspots, is actually saying to understand with some compassion and empathy what specifically inside the areas can be agreed upon and which ones are very different. It may be through this process you're going to find that you actually agree on so much more than you thought of, that the trigger, the hotspot, isn't so pertinent or as strong as you once thought, and it may be a lot more negotiable than you once thought, and it may in fact not be a priority at all. But if we can get to that point where we're understanding what these hotspots are, then have some room for negotiation. And this is what we're after, conversations keep on going. We're looking to not have doors closed, but continue to find ways to agree. And I guess the only final thing out of that two-step process I'm suggesting is also being compassionate to very difficult situations where you know there are some trigger points, is actually taking a step back, recognizing they're approaching, and then saying, we need some distance on this, I need to take a few minutes out, and then I'll come back and we'll continue the conversation. There's nothing wrong in saying that. It gives you a bit of distance before we sort of steamroll back into old triggers and old hotspots. So when it comes to difficult conversations, when you feel there's 2 points of view that need to get across, start from a positive agreement. Find where you are agreeing on certain things and work through all things you can agree to the point where you're left with the hotspots. And even then, within the hotspots, look to understand what you can agree on between those points. You may often find you actually agree on a lot more than you think, which then creates the environment to then find final solutions and get you through to an agreed compromise. So I'll leave that with you. Have a think about it the next time you have a difficult conversation or need a negotiation in your life in some form. And let me know your thoughts. See if that works for you. See what you think might not work for you, and drop a comment down and I'll reply to every single one of you. And other than that, I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I'll catch you next time.
This is how legends are made.